Today we are going to be turning in our draft grades for the 2024 Chargers class, including straight A's for them on days 1 and 2, and realizing it is very hard to give anyone in this class a poor grade.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer. And we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to everyone for making us your first listen. We appreciate the everydayers out there. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, we're getting into our grades. We are going to grade this entire 2024 draft class, and my goodness, it was really hard to give anybody less than a B on this entire draft class. A lot of great players, a lot of reasons to be very excited because you feel like you got players all across this draft that are going to come in and make an impact one way or another.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, a lot of draft grades you see, especially for the classes, and you don't see many people ripping any player or anything, and it's all projections at this point. But you started looking at this, and there's just so many things to like about pretty much every pick that they made. But today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. David, let's get into it, and let's start with round 1, pick 5, Joe Alt, the Chargers' new right tackle, best tackle in the class, taking him with the 5th overall pick. I'll start things off. I ended up giving Joe Alt an A. And to give him an A with how much I wanted someone like Malik Nabers is saying a lot. Like, the only A-plus move here for me would have been Malik Nabers. So Malik Nabers an A-plus, and I'd stand by that, even though I think it actually worked out better for them the way it all played out. But I'll give Joe Alt an A just because this is my thing. There's so much to get excited about. I mean, you literally could have an all-pro level tackle here. He has that kind of potential. He has the athleticism. His tape backs it up. Him and Rashawn Slater could be the best tackle duo in the league. And if you're looking for, how he could meet this grade, I think you look at those things and also him potentially elevating Justin Herbert's game and also at the same time helping their running game.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, I'm right next to you with my grade. I'm at an A minus.
Sure.
It's very, very close, and it's for a lot of the same reasons that you provided there with Malik Nabers. Make no mistake. I mean, and we didn't hide it. We wanted Malik Nabers with the 5th overall pick, but when you look at the totality of what the Chargers did in the draft, it makes a lot of sense to bring in the absolute best offensive lineman that the draft had to offer, and I think I can see the grade go up if he's able to replicate that college success, right? I mean, being one of the best pure pass protectors in all of college football. If he's able to bring that, and if he's able to turn into just a Charminator in the run blocking, and if he's able to just turn into a nasty finisher, I think I can see that grade go up. The only thing I can say as a concern here is if he, doesn't make that transition to the right side, right? If he's not as smooth going to right tackle, because, he played almost exclusively on the left side, spare for a couple of unbalanced looks on the right side a couple of times a game. I think that's really the only reason why you would have any legitimate concern for Joe Alt.
And that's a big part of this, right? We want to get into, hey, how can they make this grade true or exceed that grade, and also how it could not happen, right? Why they could end up getting a worse grade if we ended up doing a redraft down the road, or whatever reason they couldn't end up getting to what their potential is. And to me, it's the same thing, because there's hard to find a lot of, cons in his game, maybe a little unbalanced at times. But I think it is the transition. If he can't make that transition, or just doesn't look like the same type of player making that transition, I think that's the only way he can't live up to that kind of A grade. But
yeah,
I think the other thing too, is just like, hey, maybe he just turns into Mike McGlinchey or some of these other, 6'8", 6'9" tackles that are out there that didn't succeed. I mean, he would be one of the few that is able to do it. Not a lot of dudes at that size that are able to play at that level. So let's get to round 2, pick 34, Lad McConkey. I ended up going with an A here, David. It would have probably been even an A+, honestly, if they didn't trade up, and give something up to get him, even though I don't think they gave up very much. But, at the same time, I don't think there's anyone I would have taken ahead of him. I went back and looked at it. I mean, maybe the Johnny Newtons, there's some other guys that maybe just on a, what their tape was, what their skill was, maybe you could kind of make the argument for it. But as far as what the Chargers need was what they're getting in Ladd McConkey, I couldn't give him anything less than an A.
I'm right there with you, Dan. I gave him a square A for my grade there. Really excited about the pick because the Chargers needed to prioritize adding premium talent to the wide receiver position, and they made sure that they did that by trading up to select and secure Ladd McConkey. And I mean, I'm really excited because this guy has legitimate, real speed and has great quickness and yak ability. I mean, those are all things I'm very excited about with Ladd McConkey. And I mean, maybe some reasons for concern, or maybe the reason why the grade might not work out is if, he isn't able to stay healthy, right? Yeah. Or if he is not able to get on the same page with Justin Herbert. Those are really the only two things that I can think of that might make this grade not come to fruition.
Yeah, I think, the ways that he could even exceed this, like the best case scenario, the reason to be excited, the way he could live up to this grade is if he just bursts onto the scene as wide receiver 1 right off the bat, which isn't out of the question at all. Comes in and has an Odell Beckham Jr. type of rookie season, right? And I mean, if you look at the size and the speed and the measurables for those dudes, it's not far off. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr., a little heavier, but basically everything else across the board is almost identical. And he just becomes Justin Herbert's favorite target for the next 10 years. Like, that's how it could play out. And I mean, that's, that is in the realm of possibility. The biggest concern, besides the injuries he suffered in college, continuing to linger into the NFL, is just the physicality at the next level is just too much for him, right? As someone that, has been concerns about how much he could actually gain weight and, actually keep that kind of mass on at the NFL level, or just even in general with what his frame is like, because it's not a huge frame. Those are the only couple of things. But I mean, it's hard for me to imagine a scenario in which this dude just can't crack the Chargers' top 3 receivers or anything like that. I mean, it would be very hard for me to believe. 2A's so far. Let's get to round 3, pick 69, finishing off day 2 here with Junior Colson. I want to hear what your grade is for this one first, because I have a very high grade.
Well, this is my highest grade of the entire draft class. It is an A+ for Junior Colson. This is a perfect match. This is a match made in heaven. It's a perfect fit. He gets to play in a defense that he was in the middle of and excelled in college at the NFL level. I mean, I think there's just way too many reasons to feel like this move is going to work out and work out quickly. He's going to be comfortable. He's going to know what he's going to do. He's very physical. He's very good in coverage. He's a great tackler. I mean, the only reasons I can say that it might not work out is maybe if he gets hurt. But even then, he's proved in college that he'll play with 2 clubs on his hands. He does not care. I mean, this guy is just the absolute perfect fit for this defense, for this football team, for Jesse Minter and for Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I mean, we didn't go over our grades together before we started this show. He is the only A+ that I have. And it, again, goes just back to there wasn't another player there when the 69th pick came up that I would have rather taken, right? And I mean, these grades are all subjective. And, we're, just because we give someone a lower grade or a higher grade doesn't mean that's how the Chargers feel about them, right? Or just that they can even live up to it. It's just our feelings on these guys, and everyone's entitled to their own. Yeah. Give us your draft grades in the YouTube comments, or leave them if you listen on the podcast and a podcast review. We are interested to hear it. But yeah, A+ for me. I mean, I think as far as how he could kind of, what the best case scenario looks like, how he can meet that A+ grade, because it can't get any higher than that. It's just that he picks up exactly where he left off at Michigan. He starts day 1. He becomes that guy in Jesse Minter's defense. The same thing that Roquan Smith meant to the Baltimore Ravens, right, in Mike McDonald's defense. The same thing that Fred Warner means to the San Francisco 49ers defense. He has that ability. That's what he could turn into, a Pro Bowl level player the next 10 years. And he just gets in there and starts right where he left off. And I think there's a lot of reason to think that he will be able to get off to a quicker start. The biggest concern to me is just the game doesn't work at the NFL level, and he struggles to make that transition at, to me, maybe outside of quarterback, the toughest position to transition to the NFL. I mean, we've seen so many first-round linebackers. It didn't work right away for Roquan Smith. Didn't work for, guys like Deion Bush or Devin White, or Devin Bush or Devin White, like some of those really, really high-graded prospects, and it still takes him a while.
Kenneth Murray.
Or Kenneth Murray, the quick trigger gets him into trouble and he gives up some big plays. Passing on the combine test, hides some weaknesses in his athletic profile that maybe we don't see right now. But to me, he passed all of those color, tests with flying colors when you watched him on tape. The tape is there. There's a reason he's an A+ for us. I mean, a guy, I wouldn't have picked another guy, maybe getting the best linebacker in the entire draft at pick 69, I think is exceptional value as well. But we still have 6 more grades to hand out, and they won't all be A's. But I think there's good reason to think, hey, all of these guys could exceed these grades, and reasons why they could not live up to them. We're going to get into all of those guys and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, though, I do need to tell you guys about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, the part is always going to be perfect for you because it is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. I also need to tell you guys about Game Time, because if you are going really to any kind of event and you aren't trying to see what the prices are or what tickets you can get with Game Time, you're just making a mistake. Because Game Time is the place to get anything you want, from sports to theater to comedy to music, whatever it is, right? You can get it with Game Time, and they're also an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. This is something that me and David have both used personally. This is something that David used to get himself tickets to Lambeau Field last year and kind of cross something off of his bucket list. I mean, you can save money with this Game Time app. I mean, you save even more with the flash deals they have. You always get to see what the view is from your seat. In the all-in pricing, you can toggle this feature, which shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, because that is the worst thing ever when you get to the checkout and they're not nearly as cheap as you thought they were going to be. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. You can save money. You're going to do things anyways. Save some money. Terms apply. But again, all you have to do, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, David. Well, I'm sad to say that there will not be total straight A's in this draft grade part of the show, right? Because, I mean, it is unrealistic to just absolutely be over the moon for every pick. But with this, while we were doing this exercise, it was also very hard to find a bad grade for someone. Like, we've given out bad grades. Yep. Go back and check the draft grade show from 2023. Go look at the Max Duggan grade, and you'll realize we're not just doing this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I gave that one an F.
You may have.
Yeah.
I know neither of us was ecstatic about that pick at all. So let's get to round 4, pick 105. Justin Eboigbe, someone that I've taken a huge liking to after watching him, someone who wasn't on my radar beforehand. What did you have him graded?
Yeah, I got Justin Eboigbe graded as a B, a very solid B here, a very technically sound defensive lineman that has a very well-rounded game and very good in run support, which is something that the Chargers obviously need to make sure that they improve this year in Jesse Minter's defense after having to watch almost 3 years of really, really bad run defenses. I just couldn't see another year of bad run defense. They had to bring in a player that was going to help fix that. Maybe some reasons for concern is, he doesn't develop his pass rush repertoire. I mean, I think that's something that he needs to add to. And of course, he had a serious injury in his past, something that almost took football completely away from him. So, God forbid the injury bug, it comes back and bites him again. But those are the only things that give me any concern for Justin Eboigbe.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I ended up giving him a B+. I was really borderline B+, A- just because I love what this guy has. I mean, there may be a couple guys I would have taken ahead of him beforehand, but I'm definitely not mad at him getting the pick there because of, what he brings to the table. And I think the reason to be excited how he could exceed that grade even is because he has the tools to become an everyday starter. If you're getting an everyday starting defensive tackle with your 4th round pick, that is a great pick. And if the pass rush continues to improve and playing with the Chargers' elite pass rush actually takes his game to the next level, many reasons to think he could be an above average defensive tackle, versatile piece for this team for a long time. Biggest concern, anything involving, back or spinal cord injuries, if anything like that happens ever again, that would be really hard to kind of put him, I'm sure, in a really, really tough position. Yeah. And the same thing, isn't able to develop the pass rush. And I think the other thing is just like maybe he just never becomes more than a rotational player, right? Could that still be like a B- kind of pick? Sure. But Absolutely. That would be my concern is, why it could end up being a lower grade than this as his career ends up developing, right? So let's get to round 5, pick 137. Tarheeb Still, the cornerback from Maryland. David, what did you end up giving this grade?
Yeah, Tarheeb Still for me got a B+. I actually really like Tarheeb Still, and the biggest reason for that is he is an excellent tackler. I mean, this is a guy who is physical, he has swagger, and he has legitimate ball skills as well. So, I mean, he has a really good combination of skills that he's bringing to the NFL level. A guy that was not on my radar, not on Dan's radar, not on very many people's radar at all.
It was a big reach, according to the draft community. And huge reaches usually don't work out. That's the thing. The reason we bring up the consensus board and stuff like that is usually if someone's picked 100 spots before they were supposed to be picked, it usually does't work out. But with this guy, it feels like he could be an exception.
Absolutely. I mean, the reasons why it might not work out is he has got to clean up the penalties. He tends to grab a little bit. He's got to rein that in a little bit. But, we've talked about that a bunch of times. We'd rather have somebody that has that physicality inside them and just be able to rein them in a little bit than the other way around. It's kind of hard to teach that. But he has that inside him. That's why I was very excited about Tarheeb Still.
Yeah, I gave it a solid B. I mean, I think as far as if there's someone they could have gone with instead of there, right? Maybe that's a pick where they end up trying to address the center of the future and take a, Cedric Van Pran, or they take a Hunter Norzand or some one of those guys, right? Maybe you can make the argument for one of those guys. But I think there's lots of reason to be excited. And I think what the best case scenario looks like, the way he could easily turn this into an A, is he becomes the Mikey Samerstill of this Jesse Minter defense, right? And he takes that slot position on the Chargers starting D and never looks back. And I think the other big thing is if those ball skills that he showed in college, that natural ball skill ability that he has, continues to translate in the NFL level, and you have a playmaker that's getting Justin Herbert the ball back. As far as the biggest concern, besides getting flagged, if the flags continue, it's going to be hard for him to get off the field. It's just if the athletic ability becomes more magnified at the NFL level, kind of borderline, a little above average athlete. I think some of that gets mitigated in the slot. But still, maybe that's something they can come back and bite him, or just the aggressiveness. He can't find that balance, right? That balance of being able to not give up big plays, but still be aggressive enough to be that playmaker, or just that his size becomes a little bit more of an issue. And those, ankle tackles and the low tackles that he was making at Maryland don't work on some of the bigger guys in the NFL. So that would be my biggest concerns there, but I really, really liked that pick after I got to watch him. Let's get to Cam Hart, David. I ended up giving this one a B. I mean, I think as far as reasons to be excited, I think if he can fully maximize his ability and fully maximize the tools that he has as a 6'3" corner, right, that runs decent, hit 23 miles per hour on a GPS, he could be your starting corner for at least the next 4 seasons, right? I think that's the plus side. That's how he could exceed that grade. And I think he gets better at taking the football away because the very, very poor ball skills, at least as far as production goes in college. So if he could actually start, getting a few picks a season and actually realize the potential that his physical tools could bring him, that is how I think he could maximize it.
I'm with you there. I gave him a B. I love the size, the length, and the long speed. It's definitely there. I mean, this is a guy that can match up with anybody on the outside. I mean, I don't think there's any tight end or any wide receiver that you would not feel comfortable putting Cam Hart one-on-one with. I think he'd be able to win in those situations. So
at the NFL level?
Yeah, at the NFL level. Yeah.
You're saying you would put any receiver out there and feel good about him winning that matchup?
As far as, not being, outsized,
physically,
right? Physically outsized. Now, the quickness is the reason why I would have concern, right? Yeah. If he gets beat quick, he doesn't bring the physicality, and he gets beat with quickness. That's how he's going to have issues, and that's the reason for concern why the grade might not work out here at the NFL level.
I totally agree with that. The lateral agility gets exposed at the next level. And I think the other big thing with him, as someone who's had 3 shoulder surgeries since 2019.
Yeah, that's a concern.
That continues to plague you because, if you haven't played football, it's hard to understand, catching balls and pads isn't that easy anyways, right?
Yeah.
Getting your hands above your head and being able to make plays on the football and stuff like that while you're wearing big old shoulder pads is not the easiest thing to do. And I'm sure pads at the NFL level are super compact and much better than the ones I was playing back in the day. But still, being able to lift your arms above your head is something that's very, very important. Every time you get a shoulder surgery, those things become a little bit harder, right?
It does.
So I think that's something that, that
Speaking
would
from
be
experience.
concerning. Yeah, exactly. I know you've had something like that too. So I think that's something where it's like, hey, if that can't get better, that is something that could linger and would really affect your ability as a cornerback, especially to make plays on the football. I think the potential is there if he can realize those tools. I think the other big thing is just being able to be taught more urgency as far as getting involved in the running game, getting off of blocks of receivers and things like that, and just, having more urgency in that sense, to me, would definitely help his game. And if he doesn't do that, it would take away from what he could bring to the table physically, because he has such a big body. Use it. Go lay people out. Be a good, solid square up tackler, because you have the ability to do it. And there's some of that on your tape, just not enough for somebody that's that physically imposing for my liking. But there's 3 more picks, and the Chargers found some exceptional value later on in day 3, and at least 1A, maybe multiple A's out of these last 3 picks for the Chargers. We're going to get into those guys and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk about Monopoly Go. And I know what you're saying, flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's just too much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build each other's boards up. And the more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. You can get unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the board with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. I like the game pieces. I mean, I think we always wish there was more game pieces for Monopoly, and always getting the right piece feels like it always makes such a big difference. But with Monopoly Go, it also feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges, a ton, including their own unique minigames. And I love a minigame like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that'll help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you could win or rent frenzies. There's always something to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it for free now on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. All right, David, we still have a few more draft picks to get into, but I do want to tell everyone to make sure, if you haven't yet, to go check out Locked On Sports Today. It's the first ever of its kind, first national 24/7 sports streaming channel covering all of the national storylines, but from local experts that cover those teams every day. So make sure you guys go subscribe to that, the first ever 24/7 national sports streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Let's get to, David, the 6th round pick for the Chargers, a pick that we both really liked, in Kimani Vidal. And I think there's kind of a wide variety of outcomes that could happen with someone like this. A 5'7" running back, but a 5'7" running back that weighs 215, right? Not exactly a small running back, but what did you end up giving him as a grade when you went to him?
Yeah, Kimani Vidal out of Troy, I gave him a B, a very solid B grade. I think he dominated the level of competition that he was at. I mean, he broke a ton of tackles. I think that's one of the things that I really enjoyed watching, and I really hope that translates at the NFL level. I mean, we're talking big-time production, 297 carries, 1,661 yards rushing, and 14 touchdowns. And also, this is a phenomenal pass protector. This is a guy who's going to earn snaps on 3rd down just because he's able to lay guys out. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. I think maybe one of the reasons why he might not live up to the grade is he might not get a chance to touch the field. I mean, I think that's a legitimate concern, just with several running backs that are going to be ahead of him on the depth chart. I mean, they're going to want to run the ball, and yes, it's going to be by committee, but that doesn't mean that he's going to be part of that committee. So, and also, if he's not productive with the touches that he does receive, I think those are a couple of reasons why he might not live up to the grade.
Yeah, I ended up giving him an A-. I love the value the Chargers got for someone I feel I could play a role in this backfield immediately and maybe potentially even turn into more than that, right? If he was going to match that, I mean, he could potentially eventually become the main back in a committee type of approach, right? That he brings that ability to the table if everything clicks, because he could come in immediately and bring a spark to the running game, and he brings the explosive plays that I think would complement someone like a Gus Edwards in a committee. So I think he could easily outplay his draft value very early on. Biggest concern is the elusiveness and the power doesn't translate, right, against bigger competition. Because, I mean, you talked about over 1,600 rushing yards. Over 1,000 of those came after contact, right? But he also had, the most 10-plus yard rushes in the FBS last year out of everyone. So, like, if those things don't translate, if he starts going down on first contact, if he can't really run between the tackles, at the NFL level, then it would be a much worse grade than this, or even just the extensive kind of load that he carried in his time in college ends up taking the toll on him, right? Because he did have almost 800 career touches
a lot of mileage
at the collegiate level. So there is some mileage there. He is an older back. So I think that would be my biggest concern. This one I had a tough time with, David. Round 7, pick 225, Brenden Rice. What did you end up giving him for a grade?
I gave him an A+. And the reason why I gave him an A+ is because there's no reason why he should have been available in the 7th round. I just don't understand it. Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, this is a guy with a lot of experts, a lot of evaluators thought would go in the middle rounds, 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds. So I just don't see why he slid. I mean, this is a guy who has that NFL lineage, obviously has great size and speed and excellent hands. He only dropped 2 passes last year. So he brings a lot to the table. I think reasons for concern is maybe not be able to separate as well at the NFL level. And he doesn't figure out how to deal with the more physical corners that he might have to deal with in press man coverage.
Yeah, and I think those are legitimate concerns. I have similar ones. I ended up giving it an A- just because I don't know for certain that he's going to become an NFL starter down the road. Like that is how he could exceed this grade, right? Like he uses the chip on his shoulder and all the posts he's been putting out there and saying, I just needed a chance. And, goes out and does it and earns himself a role on this team and helps ride away with his physicality and his ability to run block and his potential contested to catch, ability and becomes a dominant red zone threat. Yeah. All of those things are in the range of possibilities, and down the road, he potentially becomes a starter because I think that is what the upside is of Brenden Rice and why he gets an A-. The biggest concerns is the average separation ability becomes much more magnified at the next level, right? Chargers already have had guys that can't get separation. You can't have too much of that, right? Yeah. When you have someone like McConkey, right, maybe the pairing is a little bit better because you have someone that is much better at it. Yeah. But that gets magnified. He can't improve his release game and gets magnified. I think as far as like when the ball's in the air, he's physical enough. I think we saw at the Senior Bowl, he fought off some straight up holding, but also some physical play by the corners there in one-on-one situations. But I think if, at the NFL level, it doesn't take much to disrupt the timing of NFL offenses, right?
Right.
So
it's just
if
you don't
he's
have a lot of time.
continuing to struggle and can't just cleanly get in and out of his breaks and cleanly get into the routes because he isn't that great at releases and physical corners can, at least get hands on him and slow him down. That's a problem at the NFL level. And I think the other thing is just can't become that dominant finisher on contested catches because I think he has that ability. If he can't become that, that's what would bring this down. Because if you can't gain the trust of Justin Herbert that says, hey, even though I'm not wide open, right, that you can still throw me the ball anyways, Justin Herbert's probably not going to throw you the football, right? That's just, it is what it is there.
That's true.
Let's get to this last one here, David. A lot of good grades, right? I'm interested to hear what you have for round 7. Pick 253, Cornelius Johnson, the Michigan man, making his return to a Jim Harbaugh team. What'd you end up giving him?
I gave Cornelius Johnson a B, a solid B. I feel like this is a guy who, another intriguing height, kind of weight, speed combo. Excellent run blocker. I mean, I think, a lot of people said the best run blocking wide receiver in the class. I mean, that's what Chad Alexander said. I mean, the assistant general manager of the Chargers. And also, I like the fact that he's a contributor on special teams as well. And when you're a 7th round pick, towards the end of the draft, you're going to have to play on special teams. And so the fact that he has experience playing on special teams and he's made an impact on special teams, that bodes well. And that definitely factored into my grade. I think maybe reasons for concern. The biggest reason is obvious for me. It's the drops. I mean, you got to clean up the drops at the NFL level. I mean, we've seen that. We saw that with Quentin Johnston last year being a 1st round pick. You got to catch the ball. I mean, if you're not catching the ball, then Justin Herbert's not going to throw you the ball. And also the limited yak ability. I mean, that's the other thing that with Cornelius Johnson, hopefully that improves. But those are reasons why he may not live up to the grade.
Yeah, I think, I gave him a B too. We're right in the same page right there. I think just because gaining another guy, right, who's thought to be potentially a 5th or a 6th round pick that could bring value to a lot of teams. I think the reasons he could kind of exceed that, if he's able to make an impact as a receiver and help jumpstart the Chargers' rushing attack as their best blocker, right? Because that's his potential. It becomes a special teams maven right off the bat, and special teams will be important not only for him, but for Brenden Rice as well. For all we know, these guys could be battling for a position on this roster, right? 2 7th-round picks. What if they add a free agent receiver? That's going to become a lot more interesting, especially as 2 7th-round picks, right? Maybe they think they can snatch one on the practice squad. We'll see. But I think it's also the athletic ability helps turn him into a legit NFL type of receiver. So we'd have to see that happen and have to see him develop over time because it's not there yet. Biggest concern for me is if the receiving parts never come, because one of the things we talked about is you can block your ass off. If you can't bring anything as a receiver, then it's still a big problem, right? If the drops continue, and like the worst case scenario for someone like Cornelius Johnson is he doesn't make the team. Like that is in the realm of possibilities.
Definitely, it is.
Develop, become the Chargers' best run blocker, help their running game turn into a legitimate, receiver that can get on the field. He could also miss the roster entirely. That's all in the wide, range of outcomes that we could see with someone like this. I'd put my money on him. I think, there's a lot to like with his game and his athletic ability to go along with what you already know, him being a great blocker. But who knows? That's why these grades can change and change quickly. But we have to love what we saw from this draft class, and I think our grades reflected that today. Like we said, we don't just give these out to give these out. There's legitimately not a water problem that I had with any of the picks that the Chargers made. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys are back here tomorrow, probably getting into a little bit of draft buy or sell. So maybe we'll ask you guys, see if you want to get any buy or sells on the show. But you can also, of course, contribute on Friday's show, Fan Mail Friday. Hit us up at Locked On LAC, where you can find the show every day as well. And to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. That's the best way. Or following me at Dan Talk Sports on Twitter and David Drogmeyer at Drew Talk SD. We post the show to both of those places, as well as on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. Still so much to get into with this draft. I'm excited for some buy or sell. Buy that lad McConkey will lead this team in targets. Junior Colson will start from day one and much more. So make sure you guys are back here tomorrow. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.